It has long been a point of contention among rock and metal fans that the Grammys overlook hard rock and metal. You could maybe argue to some extent that they've gotten slightly better in recent years, although last night was no different in terms of fumbling things within the worlds of rock and metal, at least in my opinion. There were a number of various rock and metal artists that were not nominated, that were in attendance. I'll put some red carpet photos of various artists up on the screen now. Some were nominated, some were not. Robert Trujillo from Metallica and his son Ty were there. Alpha Wolf was there. The great Joe Bonamassa performed during the premiere ceremony. And then obviously a lot of the nominees were in attendance. One of the big focuses of the event was, of course, the tragic fires in LA that continue to rage on. Last night, though, I guess the viewers of the show raised $7 million for relief efforts, and the Album of the Year award, which went to Beyonce, was presented by members of the LA Fire Department. The fires, of course, continue to be a major focus point of various events. We, of course, just had the Fire Aid charity last week, the 2 concerts in LA. So still a major talking point. But anyways, let's start as far as Grammy talks go with arguably the most entertaining moment from the event, and that is a red carpet interview with Courtney LaPlante from Spiritbox, where the interviewer from an outlet called Stage Right Secrets mistook Courtney for Poppy. Poppy, of course, also nominated for a Grammy alongside Knocked Loose for their song Suffocate. You know, obviously this was not the Grammys themselves, just a random press outlet, but still, I have no idea how you could possibly mess that up. You know it wouldn't happen with a pop artist or something like that. I mean, and beyond that, Poppy and Courtney LaPlante, they don't even really look alike. It is just amazing how things like this can happen. Here's a clip of it. If you haven't seen it, it's absolutely hilarious. And to make it even better, Courtney plays along the entire time. Check it out.
So we're here with rock royalty, Poppy. No, you are. I mean, you got nominated against Judas Priest, who I just talked to. Metallica.
I have to say, yep, I am Poppy, and I am really happy to be here, nominated with Knocked Loose. I really hope we win.
This is not your first nomination, right?
No, I actually was nominated in, I believe, 2020. Really happy to be here again. Would love to take home the Grammy for Knocked Loose and myself, because I would be the first woman to win this award.
Wow. How many women have been nominated for it?
I actually haven't looked at that, but I just always know that, you know, it's time for one of us to win, and I hope it's me or Spiritbox and Courtney.
While we're on the topic of Spiritbox and Poppy, let's get into probably the most well-rounded category overall, at least in terms of rock and metal, and the only metal category, that would be Best Metal Performance, where Gojira, of course, won alongside Marina Viata and Victor Leimana, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name correctly, for Mea Culpa, Asa Ira, beating out Judas Priest, Crowns of Horns, Knocked Loose featuring Poppy, Suffocate, Metallica, Screaming Suicide, and Spiritbox, Cellar Door. And let me just start by pointing out that just like when Megadeth won a Grammy for Dystopia back in whenever that was, 2016, 2017, something like that, and the house band played Master of Puppets, they did it again with Gojira last night and played Enter Sandman. Absolutely unbelievable how that happens. It is very funny, of course, but still just absolutely ridiculous. Check it out.
Mea Culpa.
I watched some of the other artists around other genres accept their awards, and it's amazing that when it's pop or something like that, they play a song from the actual artist that just won an award. Why can't we just do that for metal? And why another band? Why not, if you're not going to play the song, at least play any Gojira song? I mean, I don't know. It's just, it really is just so stupid. But as far as the actual win goes, I mean, it's no surprise. We knew Gojira would win as soon as the nominations were announced. I mean, at least I suspected as much. You know, I don't know. It's so not surprising. This is the one case I would say where I do think that they were deserving of it. No qualms there. But I do think that even if the song was released exactly as it was, because, you know, after the Olympics performance, they released it as an official single. But if they, you know, released it, but there was no Olympics performance, I do highly doubt that they would have won. Obviously, the Olympics was such a big deal. If you look at any of the, you know, biggest moments from 2024 type of lists in rock and metal, no doubt Gojira playing at the Olympics was there, if not at the top. So, you know, I would say no doubt the Olympics played a role in Gojira taking that win. Overall, though, I think all of the nominees for the metal category were realistic options. I do kind of hate the fact that Metallica was in there for a song from 72 Seasons, though, when that album came out in April of 2023. But also, as we just discussed, I mean, clearly the Grammys love Metallica, so not really a surprise there. I don't know when the actual cutoff is, but April of 2023 just feels a little strange, something that came out then to be included now. But I don't know. It also irritates me to no end, though, that there is no, or that the best metal performance is the sole metal category. I mean, everything else has best song, best performance, best album. Why can't metal have those? It's ridiculously stupid how metal just always feels like nothing more than an afterthought. I also think that the Grammys really, really need to bring back the best hard rock performance category. They should also, hard rock, best hard rock song, best hard rock album, all that kind of stuff. But they got rid of hard rock performance back in 2011. Them Crooked Vultures was the last to win. But it is absolutely ridiculous that they got rid of that category. And it really starts to become an issue, I think, when we get into the rock categories, beginning with Best Rock Song, where St. Vincent won with Broken Man, beating out the Black Keys with Beautiful People Stay High, Pearl Jam and Dark Matter, Dilemma from Green Day, and Gift Horse from Idols. To be fair, rock has become so subjective at this point in terms of what is actually considered rock and what should not be considered as such. I am not one of those gatekeepers that think only hard rock is considered rock. I mean, I think it's way more nuanced than that. But according to the Recording Academy, the reason that they got rid of the hard rock category is because, quote, it was determined that metal has a very distinctive sound and hard rock more closely aligns with rock and can exist comfortably as one end of the rock spectrum. So in the case of St. Vincent, I am not saying that she is not talented. She obviously is very talented, but I guess I have a little bit of a hard time labeling her as a rock artist. I mean, I can certainly hear some rock-leaning elements in some of her songs. To be fair, I am not an expert on her music whatsoever, but from what I've heard and combing through some more of her songs, I just don't really see it, and I don't really think it's necessarily fair to lump her in with bands like Pearl Jam, Green Day, maybe even Idols for that matter. I mean, it just doesn't exactly seem fair to those bands, and that's why we need the hard rock category back for bands like Green Day, like Pearl Jam, things like that. And what's even more frustrating about the entire St. Vincent situation is that not only does she win Best Rock Song for Broken Man, but then she wins Best Alternative Music Performance with her song Flee, and wins Best Alternative Music Album with All Born Screaming, which contains both Broken Man and Flee. I also don't really see how it's fair to be in both rock and alternative categories. I mean, to be fair, St. Vincent was not nominated for Best Rock Album, just performance. We'll get to the Best Rock Album in a minute, but I just don't really get it. And again, it does not exactly seem 100% fair. I think it really should be one or the other, especially when we're talking everything from just one album. I mean, I'm not saying every artist has to be pigeonholed into one genre, but when you're winning rock and alternative, and I don't know, it doesn't really make sense to me. But either way, let's move on to Best Rock Album, where the Rolling Stones and Hackney Diamonds beat out Happiness Bastards from the Black Crowes, Fontaine's DC and Romance, Saviors from Green Day, Tank from Idols, Pearl Jam's Dark Matter, and No Name from Jack White. Look, I love Hackney Diamonds. I do think it's a great album. I know everybody doesn't see it that way. I love it. I saw the band on that tour last summer. They are absolutely still crushing, even into their 80s. But that said, I mean, is Hackney Diamonds the actual best rock album of the year? Probably not. And that's where I do think it becomes somewhat apparent that the Grammys really are nothing more than just a popularity contest. I mean, how can you really compete with the Rolling Stones? One of the biggest musical artists in history, much like the Beatles, winning Best Rock Performance, which we'll get into in a second. But, the Stones were also one of the few winners who were not in attendance. The album's producer, Andrew Watt, was on hand to accept on behalf of the band. Andrew also contributed to the record in a number of ways, played on a bunch of the songs, he did some writing, etc. Personally, I am happy that the album won. My personal picks, at least in terms of preference, were Hackney Diamonds and then Happiness Bastards from the Black Crowes. But that's just my tastes, and I don't really think my tastes reflect that of the mainstream. And I'm also not saying that I think either of those albums were the most deserving for the win. I don't think anyone was expecting the Black Crowes to win. I certainly was not. And obviously they did not. But, you know, as with most of these categories, I mean, it is extremely subjective in terms of what you think should or should not have been nominated. But of what we got, Hackney Diamonds probably not the most deserving. I don't know. I digress, though. Jumping to the final rock category, Best Rock Performance, where the Beatles won with Now and Then, beating out the Black Keys, Beautiful People Stay High, Green Day, The American Dream Is Killing Me, Idles, Gift Horse, Pearl Jam, Dark Matter, and St. Vincent, once again, Broken Man. As I'm sure you can tell by now, a lot of these same nominees really just rotated around here between the categories, but with this one, I really do not feel like the Beatles should have won this. You know, to be fair, I think Now and Then is a cool song, but, you know, I don't know. I will say it does not use AI in the same way that some people I have seen suggest that it does online. It was used to separate John Lennon's vocal from his piano playing, but the piano was actually redone recently by Paul McCartney. AI was not used, from what I understand, on Lennon's actual vocal or to alter it in any way. But, you know, aside from that, the song is really just a hodgepodge of different parts across multiple decades. I mean, you know, God only knows when John Lennon did the vocal and the original piano's not on the track, but you figure he did the vocal, I think, back in the 70s. I believe George Harrison did the guitar in the mid-90s or so. And then Paul McCartney and Ringo just did their performances recently. But, I mean, it's really just something that was kind of pieced together, not deserving of Best Rock Performance by a long shot. One, I think, could argue that the Beatles influenced every artist at the Grammys, from rock to metal to pop to country to whatever, which is true to some extent. But the band, you know, the band as a band has not existed in decades. Only half of the members are still alive. You know, it's a cool song. It does not deserve the win, in my opinion. I think, you know, you should give that to somebody that's active, somebody that's actively putting out new music. You know, Now and Then from the Beatles, I guess, to me, really just felt kind of like almost just like a gift from the Beatles, you know, something for the fans. But I don't know. That's just my take on it. I'd love to know what you think down below. But before we wrap this up, I would be remiss if I did not talk about arguably the most disappointing thing about the entire event, and that is the In Memoriam. I saw it and I counted maybe 5 or so rock or rock adjacent artists: Steve Albini, Dickie Betts, Phil Lesh, Eric Carmen, John Mayall, maybe 1 or 2 more, but a ridiculous amount of snubs. No Paul Di'Anno, no Jack Russell, no Shifty Shellshock, no John Sykes. Spiritbox, who was nominated, their former bassist, Bill Crook, he died last year. No mention whatsoever. I understand that it would take an ungodly amount of time to go over everyone. You can't get to them all, unfortunately. I understand that. But there are plenty of people across all genres, I'm sure, that had an impact that were not included in that In Memoriam, that felt like they only had, I don't know, maybe 25, 30 people or so, when in reality there are dozens, if not hundreds, that died that had an impact. But especially with rock and metal alone, I mean, there's, I don't know, off the top of my head, probably at least 30, 40, maybe even 50 or more hard rock and metal artists, and not really a single one of them mentioned. The lack of care and interest is incredibly irritating. Not surprising at all, but just very, very frustrating. But hey, that's the Grammys. Love it or hate it. I'm sure we'll talk about it again later this year when the 2026 nominees are announced. I think the nominees normally come out sometime around November, and then this time next year when the ceremony happens. But until then, that's all I got for you. Thanks so much for hanging out. Feel free to drop a like and subscribe below if you feel like it, and I'll see you next time.